Hey everyone, it's Little Lollycat here, and I'm here to talk to you about my year in diapers, because I have genuinely spent a year in them now. As in 24/7. Not fantasy stuff, genuinely living in them 24/7. And I will do another video basically to explain why, but for this one, basically some people have asked about it, like what it's like going 24/7, some of the issues and stuff like that. Sort of the fantasy versus reality sort of aspects. So I thought I would, chime in now that I've actually done it for a year. So, first things first. It's expensive.
We love cloth dips.
Yes. So, when you're genuinely 24/7, you do need to find ways to basically cut costs and stuff like that. So it is not constantly 24/7, always 5,000 milliliter fancy ABDL style dips. I will admit that I am very spoiled in that I do get to wear a lot of them, but I do also have things like medical brand dips in there, in that closet. What I will say is I do tend to try and go for things that are 4,000 to 5,000 milliliter range, because then I only need to wear 3 a day. But there's also things like I wear cloth dips to cut down costs, because then it's 1 dip less a day, if you know what I mean. But it is, yeah. But it does come with a lot of issues. Cloth dips. I use them to cut down the cost, and basically it gives you an option where you're not spending so much, and realistically you really do get your money's worth out of them. If you consider the fact that all of the cloth dips I have basically been used almost like around the 100 time mark now, I would say, in the time I have had them. Which kind of means that at £35, they've gone down to basically 35 pence a usage right now, compared to £2 per dip. It is a massive decrease, so it is something you need to consider when you are looking into something like this. You do need to be aware of cost. Another thing is you need to always be prepared and ready for it in public, because accidents happen and leakages happen, and basically you always need to carry like 1 or 2 extras with you just in case when you are going out. Which means that normally you can't really travel light, you need a backpack with you everywhere you go. And there is the added thing of like when we were in Rome, me having to go into the Colosseum and open said backpack to the security guards. And I will say 9 times out of 10 everyone is fine with it. In fact, some of the people just look a bit concerned and want to make sure I'm okay. But every so often you'll obviously get a reaction. But for situations like that, obviously I try and keep the more medical looking ones in my backpack, so it's a bit more understandable, and if I'm wearing something colourful then I'm wearing it. But it is something you have to consider, and you have to be aware of where you're going and how long you're going for, and if you're going to be able to bring a change, where you can change, because a lot of times it ends up being that you need to either use the disabled toilets so that you can basically flop out, or if you learn how to. At this point, I can do one while standing on a wall. Well, standing against a wall, I can basically put one on myself, which I've done. Yeah, which is what I have to do at airports. It's how I cope.
So how do you cope going through airport security?
This is the other thing. Airport security is dangerous, because basically I have to take it off at the very last second, because it will set off their machines and you will be taken aside. So I have to take them off the last second before I'm about to go through the machines. I run to the toilet, take it off, then I walk through the machines, and the second I'm on the other side, I grab my stuff, run to the bathroom, put another one on. Because I work out that I've basically got about 10 minutes at a push if I, just before going through the thing, if I go try and empty my bladder completely as much as I can, I've got about 10 minutes till I leak. And that's it. So it is something that you have to be quite aware of when you're doing it. It's not the easiest thing to do, and I know there are people that would suggest things like training pants, but many of these machines pick up wherever there's bulk. So if you have training pants on, it will pick up the bulk, which is not ideal either. Yeah. So it's added little things. It's basically everything you do, you have to take a little step back and go, okay, I need to consider this, this and this. Like things that I found easy before, like I could go out to a club and I could wear a bodycon dress. I can't really do that anymore because dips are too obvious. So it's kind of changed the way I dress so that I can hide it better.
Packing for Rome was amazing.
Yeah.
We are the only couple that take more on the way out than coming back.
Yeah. Having to make enough space for enough dips. Also the thing of, am I going to be able to buy them there? Are they going to be decent enough quality that they will survive, or do I need to bring them with me, sort of idea is quite a pain. Yeah. Even things like if you go on a night out. If you go on a night out and you're a woman and you take a bag, most bouncers check your bag if you go into a club. So, if I want to go out, I will be wearing, but I need to bring a change, which means I have to bring it in my bag, which means bouncers know that I've got it in my bag, which is embarrassing. But if you're at a club, you can't really bring a bag in. So you have to kind of leave it with the cloakroom. So oftentimes it becomes a case of, if I want to go out, I have to consider the fact that I have, especially if I drink anything, that if I'm wearing something that's 5,000 milliliters, it's going to be dead in a couple of hours, and I'm going to have to leave. Which is not great.
We manage.
We manage, yeah. We just don't quite clubbing. It's fine. Yeah. But there's a lot more to think about. It's not just all the big fantasy of I'm walking around with something puffy between my legs. And it's also for anyone that's worn them for an extended period of time, you're probably more than aware that things like your thighs digging into the dip and causing some chafage can be an issue. Which I will say, one of my biggest solutions for this, and people, when I was first putting dips on, people always told me that you had to make sure the bottom tapes were as tight as possible so that you wouldn't leak, and all this nonsense. It's a lie. Right? I will horrify people right now by saying that you do not need to make sure the bottom tapes are tight as possible. You can put them on loose, as long as the top tapes are tight enough that the dip is held in place and doesn't move around. And this is what completely saves my thighs and legs, because before I would wear dips, when I first started wearing quite a few years ago, when I put dips on, I always did the tight bottom legs. I could wear them for a couple of days and then I would start to really hurt because they were basically cutting in and they were chafing and they were causing all sorts of issues. Whereas if you put them on loose, you might get some mild chafage after like 3-4 months, but it's easily fixed with just some cream, so there's no issue there. It really, really, really does genuinely make a difference. It's the difference between being comfortable and not, and yeah, comfortable. Yeah. I will say it's obviously, if you wear 24/7 as well, it does take away from a lot from the little aspect. Because if you're wearing 24/7, then, and you used to wear them to get into little space, the puffiness is not quite the same. However, I do try and do things like, I have all white dips, which I tend to keep for when I genuinely want to feel little. And it stops it from, because it's an all white dip and it's something a little bit different, my brain, if I try and separate them so that my brain is always very aware that, okay, this is for a little space, this is still little inducing, whereas if you keep using them constantly, the sort of frill and everything sort of disappears from them and they just become a bit mundane every day. Which is a bit of a shame, but I mean, obviously I still prefer to wear patterned ones because they're more colourful and pretty and a bit more cheerful than the medical ones, but
you need a bin.
Oh yeah, that's another one. Your usage will be ridiculous. If you're wearing basically the 5,000 milliliter dips, which are the ones that I do wear, I think if I was springing for like the 3.5 ones, and I would have no chance. I'd probably go for like 5 of them a day, which would be ridiculous price wise if I use the 5 ones. So you'll basically go for at least 3 a day. So basically, if it wasn't for cloth dips, I would have gone through over 1,000 dips this year. Which obviously I also have things like I still wear dry nights occasionally. They are for very short periods of times when a dip might not last till bedtime, but I have like an hour to fill in between.
It is to that degree. You have to literally plan your day.
Yeah, you have to plan everything around it. I have to know when to change and when not. And if sort of I have the dry nights which will last like an hour. I have some really, really cheap medical ones that will last a couple of hours if I need them. But it's that little bit of planning and spacing that makes it a little bit easier. And I will say it is expensive. It is painful if you aren't looking after yourself right. Like obviously I would say showering every day isn't that much of an option anyway. You should be doing it. However, if you're wearing constantly, you're not just going to be showering every day, you're probably going to be washing more than once a day to make sure that you aren't causing skin damage and irritating yourself and all this hassle. Finding out if you're good with things like, because powder might bring out a rash in some people and creams might bring out a rash in some people, like pseudo-creme, really common cream used by people. I can't use it. I have a horrible reaction to it every time I use it. It like tightens my skin up, it makes me really uncomfortable. It hurts, honestly. I have like a little reaction every time I use it. So it really is just finding things that make it more usable, getting into a routine with it and being aware of what you're doing. Yeah. So.
Changing table?
What about changing table?
Useful to have.
It is useful to have, but I do change everywhere.
That's true.
I frequently change on the bed. I do change on the bed a lot. It is... I think some people while watching this might be a little bit... just, like, might be a bit sad, because obviously there's the whole fantasy of going 24/7 and how it's going to be amazing and brr 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 brr. But the reality is it really does impact your life. It makes little things a lot harder than it needs to be. Like things like I want to go swimming but my bladder doesn't hold. So I'm now a bit like I can't really go swimming. Or things like I want to go out to a club or a bar and I want to dress appropriately, but I can't really do that because I can't have anything tight around basically my waist, crotch area, or people will see. Things like that.
No ways to hide it.
Yeah, basically you have to change all of your dressing habits, you have to change all these different things. Even if you wear the thinnest of the thin, most of them will show through on
We'll do
things.
a video down the line. We'll do a fashion show of life.
A fashion show of life.
Yeah. how we go out.
To be fair, it's also the fact that as a female, I am very aware of the fact that when I walk outside and I have this bulge around this area, people either will assume I am pregnant or of a sizable nature. Which does, once again, change how I dress, because I'm like, I am not as big as I look. I am aware that this is adding extra weight to me. Especially if I ever go out in a cloth dip, because that adds like an extra 6 inches. Yes. Yeah. So, one of the most common questions I am asked is, if it was up to me, would I have gone 24/7? Because, as I'm going to cover in another video, it wasn't up to me. And the easy answer is no. Realistically, no. Because it does impact every aspect of your life from then on. Everything you do. Everything you wear, everything... Like, you can't just go for a walk without having to priorly prepare quite heavily. So, if it was up to me, I wouldn't be 24/7. I would probably be... I'd probably wear still quite a lot, but just not 24/7. Because it does impact everything. But, yeah. Yeah. So, that is my year. I do I will say, obviously, I still like dips in general, and I do like some of the little side and all that stuff, and what it does for me there, and how it can make me feel small and cute and safe and stuff like that. But just to be able to take them off for one night, like every month, would be quite nice without having to risk peeing myself in the club. That would be good. Yeah. Okay. And hopefully this might be a little bit helpful to some of you, because I know a lot of people talk about moving to 24/7 without actually thinking through the consequences, especially if they're going to let their bladder go, which I will say is not my case. It was already gone. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful to some of you, and I will talk to you all later. Bye everyone!